Good afternoon, everyone. I call this meeting to order, and as you can see, I will be serving as your chair today. It's my honor, and we'll get right to business. So we have interpreters today to provide Spanish translation, and would you please introduce yourself? While we are waiting for the interpreters to make it back into the hearing, we'll continue to open up the meeting by going through the remainder of our notes, and then I will just ask to be notified when the interpreters are in the building. Or should I wait for the interpreters because we are going to be conducting business?
Chairwoman Carter, and good afternoon, subcommittee members. We could wait for the interpreter if you'd like. One of the things I think we were going to go to next was public comment, and I know one of the speakers who was calling in overseas is not online yet. So if we wouldn't mind waiting just a couple of minutes, and then we can get started.
Thank you. So members, should we stand in recess or just stay live?
Let's take a quick recess.
Thank you, members. We're going to move to recess. We'll come right back to order as soon as the interpreters are in the building. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and I call the meeting back to order. And it's just as an announcement to the committee and to those watching at home, we will be providing Spanish interpretation post-committee meeting. So right now we will not have live interpretation, but it will be provided at the conclusion of this meeting. So continuing on to our agenda, if you notice on your agenda, there are two public comment periods, and they will be up to 30 minutes in length. So speakers will have up to 2 minutes to comment. However, prior to the start of the public comment period, I may specify a briefer duration based on the volume of speakers, and right now it doesn't look like we'll be needing to do that. So if you are attending in person and you would like to speak, you will need to sign up to speak at the kiosk located at the council chamber entrance before the second call to the public is notified on the agenda. So for virtual participants, registration to speak must be submitted 2 hours prior to the start of each meeting, and speakers will be called in the order received, beginning with the virtual participants. Any questions from members on that? Hearing none, thank you. And is our virtual speaker on the line yet? If not, okay. So our first agenda item is introductory remarks. So during this meeting, we will be going over follow-up items from the last meeting, and the subcommittee has received comments from the public, and members have their own vision of priority capital needs. So we will continue to receive more input today, and as the subcommittee hears presentations and public comment today, I will ask that members keep in mind we have a limited time to reach our recommendations. So we are tasked with identifying the prioritized items for our list to present to the executive committee, and that is to be done no later than the last scheduled subcommittee meeting. So there will not be additional subcommittee meetings scheduled. So by the end of this meeting, the goal is to identify the universe of projects that we would want to consider for our ranking and evaluation. So we talked about in the last meeting that we could prioritize projects using a methodology that the staff has developed, which would require an online vote, but we'd have to do that after this meeting, or we could have a discussion today if the committee feels comfortable doing that. We will have a short briefing on that process in the next agenda item. So our next agenda item, any questions or discussions on that from the committee members? Our next agenda item is for follow-up discussion and public comment regarding capital needs and discussion of the subcommittee's process for prioritizing those capital needs. So unless our public comment is on the line at this point in time, we will transition to staff describing how we will prioritize these capital needs. So are they online? They are not. So we will move right over to staff. And if you could please just describe how we could prioritize these projects. Thank you.
Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, with me, I'm Ginger Spencer, Deputy City Manager, and with me today, who you've seen present before, is our Community and Economic Development Director, Ms. Christine Mackey. We also have our Deputy Budget and Research Director, Mr. Chris Fazio, and one of our city attorneys, Mr. Thomas Stack. Ms. Mackey will actually lead us in a presentation today that contains follow-up information that was requested by the subcommittee. Also, I'd just like to enter into the record that the subcommittee also received a letter from the University of Arizona, and this is in regards to the CAMI project, C-A-M-I, and this letter was submitted by President Robert C. Robbins of the U of A, as well as Senior Vice President for Health Sciences, Dr. Michael D. Dake. And then also you received a follow-up letter from Arizona State University as well that we'd like to enter into record from Dr. Sally C. Morton. And that is in regards to the $15 million project that was submitted by ASU for consideration, which is currently in future capital needs. In regards to the CAMI project from the U of A, I just would like to say that the U of A is requesting that this project be considered as a priority for a future bond project. So although it's not currently listed as a future capital needs, if it is the direction of the subcommittee to include it for future capital needs, it could be considered there. And then also on page 3 of their letter, the amount that they would be requesting for a future bond program is $35 million for that project. And with that, I will turn it over to Director Mackey.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairwoman and members of the committee. As we move through our process today, we thought it would be helpful to go over what we've talked about, go over our projects, and provide some additional color and detail as you consider your decision-making process. So as we look, as the committee is familiar with, staff's priority project is the Rio Reimagined land acquisition. As we look at that priority, the priority project, you will remember that this is an area along the Rio Salado. This is an area that the city of Phoenix and others have invested in through a decades-long planning process, through current efforts, through current activities to move this area forward. It was an area in the 1940s and 50s and 60s that was incredibly robust in trade and economic development and activity bringing the community to the river, and this area over the last 50 years has fallen into disrepair. The current development trends that we see will create obstacles for us in lengthening any time that we have in redeveloping this area. And what I mean by that is, as we've talked about, we've been very, very fortunate in economic development, and as we like to say, Phoenix is hot. And Phoenix is hotter nowhere more, though, so in the central city. And in the central city, as we look at industrial with just-in-time, with being closer to the airport, being closer to the workforce, this is land that had long been zoned as light industrial and heavy industrial. And the industrial development community is finding this area very attractive. So if we delay land acquisition for much longer, I fear that there would not be meaningful land to be able to acquire, because the industrial community has identified this as a hot spot and is in the process of acquiring land. The program that staff's proposing would allocate funding each year through the bond process, but as Mr. Fazio spoke with us about in the first meeting, it is possible through our budget and research process to accelerate funding opportunities to take advantage of sales as they happen. Staff is proposing a total over 5 years of $23.5 million for land acquisition, the percent for the arts, and for remediation and planning. So as you had your last committee meeting, there were some very, very thoughtful questions that came out. So I thought it would be helpful to kind of walk you through what that $23 million could get for us and give you kind of a place by which your discussions could take place. As we look at the Rio, we've seen a wide range of land acquisition prices throughout that particular area. When I first started with the city, you could have picked up land at sub $3 a square foot, and that was only 8 years ago. It was not an area that was on the radar screen of many in the development community. Today, we've seen land trade for as high as plus $40 a square foot. But we have also seen more of the average estimate, where we see most of the average transactions taking place, is closer to $20 a square foot. So if we look at $20 million, that amount would provide an opportunity to secure about 23 acres of land along the Rio. And as we discussed in our previous meeting, that might be in one larger, meaningful piece, but it could also be in quite a number of smaller pieces that would put the city at the table in the negotiations and discussions with private sector as they move forward. And I'm going to show you a real-world example in just a moment as how that has taken place. Staff does have particular sites identified that we think could really accelerate the vision that Congressman Pastor and Senator McCain and Arizona State University architects have had for this area for, my goodness, 50 years? 50 years. And so we've got those key sites narrowed in on. And when we look at the $20 million, that would leave us $3.5 million remaining for environmental remediation, for planning process, for zoning, for things that we needed to do. It's not to say we wouldn't spend all of the $23 million on land acquisition if we needed to, but it just to give the committee a thought as to how that could work. Once the sites, should this move forward, should our voters choose to move this forward as part of the election process in 2023, the city and their acquisition of the land would then take those properties out for a request for proposal to have private sector develop those sites. And we've found great success over the last decade in partnering in a public-private partnership and leveraging private sector funding to get that done. We see this as an area that would bring destination retail, restaurants, open space, hospitality, but community benefits. So as we've talked about, we look at Tempe Town Lake. That is a lot of corporate activity and great, beautiful, wonderful rowing and ASU and lots of stuff. We see our vision as more as the Phoenix Riverwalk, if you will, that place that draws people back in to be outside. So as we look at the expectations with that lens of really jobs, community benefit, a Riverwalk, retail, hospitality, restaurants, if we looked at a request for proposal, we could expect the additional investment leveraged against the city's $23.5 million would be in today's dollars. Now, if we develop 5 years from now or longer, that can go up, it can go down. We've seen what's happened there. But somewhere between $80 and $100 million would be leveraged with the private sector. We'd see that bring 200 to 350,000 square feet in restaurants, in retail, in hospitality, in maybe it's an amphitheater, maybe it's a community space. Approximately 1,000 jobs would be expected at the completion of construction. And at any given time, you'd probably have 250 construction jobs on the site. Without, as I mentioned earlier, without the city taking a lead position, I do fear private sector will go ahead and develop the area as to industrial development. Not a bad thing, great jobs, but really not the vision that Congressman Pastor and Senator McCain had for this area. Let me give you a real-world example. This is my pride and joy, so you'll have to excuse me while I brag just a little bit right now. This is a recent private-public sector partnership that was created. This is the Del Rio landfill. It is a city-owned landfill. It's approximately 150 acres. It was the city-owned landfill. It ceased being a landfill in 1981. We've taken it out for request for proposal innumerable times since 1995, and no biters. Nobody was really interested. It was either what they wanted to do wasn't what the city wanted, or as we like to say, they're all mouth, no trousers, which means that they could do their development, but all they need is the city's money to be able to do the development, which is never a benefit for our citizens. So in our community work, the city council so wisely offered us the opportunity, since we'd RFP'd it so many times, and we RFP it, sometimes we have hamstrings that we can't talk to the community. It has to go through, for those of you that are in government, you understand very restrictive procurement processes. And so council very wisely in 2019 authorized us to go out for a private sector sale, and we made it for a private offering. And that brought an incredible development with a partnership with a company called Arizona Fresh. And Arizona Fresh is a Phoenix, Mexico-based company, and they came forward with exactly what the community wanted. It is a 20-acre public park that reconnects the community to the Rio. Think bandstand, think amphitheater, think outdoor venues. It's a food innovation center. It has a permanent farmers market, which brings fresh, healthy food back to a food desert. It allows businesses in South Phoenix to be able to sell their goods at this farmers market. I'm going to show you some pictures in just a moment. It has a food innovation center. There are approximately 30 small farmers that still exist in South Phoenix, but they don't have that common space to be able to sell their produce. The Arizona Fresh building you see in green provides 3,000 square foot bays where those South Phoenix farmers can come in and sell, not just to Kroger or Albertsons or Bash's, but and I tease him because I use his name in my presentation all the time. If Sam Fox is looking for tomatoes for his salad, I get a text from him every time I do it. Sam Fox is looking for tomatoes for his salad. He can come in and just buy tomatoes for his restaurant for that week. So it's leveraging small business in Phoenix, but also very large farmers out of Arizona, very large farmers out of Mexico that can sell as well. So it is at Ultimate Build Out. You see the phases in front of you. It will be an agri-tech food innovation center, really re-envisioning a brownfield turned into a health field, and how food can be grown in a more efficient manner. We do have our universities partnering with us on this project. It is, you look back over your career and you think of ones that you're so excited about. God, this one gets me giddy. Every time I see it, it gets me giddy. They will break ground in the first quarter of 2023. And they do have some site remediation work, as you can imagine, being a landfill. But I wanted to show you just some renderings of what can happen when a thoughtful process takes place with the right public-private partnership to bring a benefit back to the community. I would argue that without the city-owned land, this project would have never taken place. We were able to leverage the city-owned land to not just bring industrial development, bring quality jobs, bring a mixed-use development, but to be able to bring back exactly what the community wanted. And you see that public market in front of you. You see the living labs that our landfill will become. You see the outdoor amenity and open space, and then the above-ground gardens. Roseanne Albright is our Office of Environmental Programs. Roseanne's been our partner in crime on this for a very long period of time, and as you can imagine, we can't deep water into an existing landfill, so the beds will be raised so that food innovation can take place in very unique ways. I just thought, as you think about the Rio, and we look there, and as we zoom in, we think, oh my goodness, that's such a heavy lift. It's a heavy lift till you put the right team together and you produce things for the community that brings benefits for decades to come. So as we look at the acquisition wrap-up of the Rio Reimagined, this project is not covered under any other scope of an existing project or program. Partial funding would reduce the benefit and impact of the project. The project cost estimates did come from city staff, but those were real-world comparables that we have from running our own comps of real estate transactions that have happened over the past 6 months. The project doesn't have a stated date of completion. As any of you that have worked on a real estate transaction, you know they take on a life of their own. But it would allow us the opportunity to get in the game, get at the table over a 5-year period of time to acquire some of these sites. And then, depending on the property acquired, the project might require additional staff services to manage the project, but that would be under my department in partnership with our Office of Environmental Programs and our Public Works Department, who helps us manage our real estate. We already manage our own real estate, so we have a team that does that today. Before I go on, I'll pause, and Madam Chair, I'd ask you if there are any questions of your committee.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members for this project specifically?
So I could just, this is Jack Sokolov, so I could just get a little greater clarity. And first of all, you should be very excited about this. It's a very exciting project. It has so many different dimensions. But at the end of the day, it always comes back, from my perspective, to scope and scale. How big of a project is this that you've given us as an example? And how does it relate to the project that we're thinking about funding in our bond consideration?
Madam Chair, Committee Member Sokolov, it is when we think about the Del Rio, it's about 150 acres. When you look at what could potentially be developable, you take the park away, because the park's park's an open space city park. You take away the roadway systems, kind of the margin edges. The Del Rio project is approximately 120 developable acres. So it is about 6 times greater than what we'd be able to acquire with our project here today. I would note that there are no greater than 100-acre sites that remain along the Rio that are not planned for or under construction for some other use. I think the largest contiguous site that remains would be 80 acres, and that is, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, it's just 70 and change acres, but let's round to 80, that is east of the riparian, the habitat that we have that is at Central and the river.
So when you look at scope and scale, and you see a development of this nature, which is 120 acres, and it obviously has a wonderful variety of different assets, all aggregated, and quite candidly, the synergy that's associated with it. Where do you is the 120 acres the ideal site size? Is it if it were half that size or a third of that size? When do you start getting diminishing returns in relationship to the lowest size of parcel for development of this type.
Chairwoman Carter, Committee Member Sokolov, in that area, it is, again, not having those larger sites to go, it depends where you're looking at. So in downtown, we can do a quarter of an acre and build a 40-story high-rise. Mm-hmm. Along the river, when you look at the when you look at the Arizona Fresh project along the Del Rio, if we take the industrial buildings off and we take the park off, it's slightly less than the 20 acres that we would have the ability to acquire. So I think the 20 acres, I would say in that area, I would guess anything probably under an acre that you would try to acquire would probably not make a meaningful connection. I would say you kind of need 3 to 4 acres and up to 20 to make a meaningful a community benefit through that area. To bring in, when you look at a hotel site, when you look at a retail site that kind of connects and restaurants go together, you'd need at least 4 acres to be able to do something that was meaningful.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, sir.
Thank you. Members, any further questions about this? I do believe we have our public comment on the phone waiting after this, so we'll pause after this and then go to the rest of the items. Please continue.
So, Director Mackey, the idea is to use this money in a strategic way. You can't tell us exactly at the moment where the land is you're going to buy. You can't point to it or the project, but what this allows you to do, if I understand it correctly, is like in the example you showed, to ensure that there's a public element that links you to the river. And by strategically buying some pieces, the private sector will come in, maybe they'll buy something adjacent to you or around you, but this gives you a seat at the table to then leverage the land that you've purchased for community benefit while the economic development benefit is happening adjacent to that. But where that happens, how that happens, the scale of the parcels is TBD. So what we're giving you is the ability to be in the game. Is that a way to think about this?
Chairwoman Carter, Committee Member Ryder, that is absolutely a wonderful way to think about this. It's getting us in the game. It's putting a seat at the table to have that conversation. I will be nothing but completely honest. Of course, as you can imagine, we have sites that we think would be our best opportunity. I would not want to offer them in public because you'd be surprised how fast the price per square foot goes up when somebody knows the city wants them. And so to keep our powder dry as to where those sites are, and not that we've identified the full set of sites, we haven't. We have some ideas as to ways that we could come to the table to then leverage private sector and private investment land around us to put us a seat at the table to encourage to develop what we want to develop.
Thank you. Committee members, any further questions about the Rio Reimagine project? Hearing none, we will take a break with our discussion on the capital needs and move to public comment for our first virtual guest. So we will open it up, our public comment regarding the items in general that we're discussing as a committee, not just the Rio Reimagine. I think we have one person on the phone right now waiting to present, and that person is virtual. So I will give each speaker 2 minutes. We will start with our virtual participants. When your name is called, your audio device will be unmuted and you may begin your remarks. At the conclusion of the virtual speakers, then at the end of the meeting as well, we will go into the second section of public comment. I will now ask the city attorney to explain the rules of public comment in the GO Bond Committee meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the public may speak to comment on the General Obligation Bond Program. The City Code requires speakers to present their comments in a respectful and courteous manner. Profane language, threats, or personal attacks on members of the public, council members, committee members, or staff are not allowed. A person who violates these rules will lose the opportunity to continue to speak. The committee and staff cannot discuss or comment on matters related to pending claims or litigation.
Thank you. And I'm going to look for staff guidance. There are 5 virtual speakers. Should we do the one that has a time constraint, or should we do all 5 virtual and then go back to discussion?
Chairwoman and members of the subcommittee, if it's okay, if we can take all 5 of the public comment, but we would start Dr. Dake first.
Perfect. Thank you. Committee members, are you okay with sort of this bifurcated meeting? We'll do our virtual speakers and then we'll do our in-person speakers at the end. Please proceed.
Okay, our first virtual speaker is Michael Dake, followed by David Higginson. Michael, are you available?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. My name is Michael Dake. I am the Senior Vice President of Health Sciences for the University of Arizona. And I'd like to introduce you to the Center for Advanced Molecular and Immunological Therapies, or CAMI. CAMI will be a national biomedical research hub in Phoenix to unravel the complexities of the immunology of cancers, infectious diseases, and autoimmune conditions, and to develop novel strategies or the diagnosis, prevention, and treatment of diseases. Researchers and physician scientists are increasingly using precision medicine to develop new cell and gene-based treatment options for diseases, building on the idea that the most effective defense against health issues is the body's own natural immune system. The center will have 4 areas of research focus: cancer, infectious diseases, autoimmune diseases, and real-time immune system monitoring. Immunotherapy is one of the most promising approaches to cancer treatment, as it has the potential to sidestep the effects of therapies that can compromise patients' long-term health and wellness. CAMI is being developed under the guidance of a 22-member advisory council of leaders from academic research, biomedical and healthcare industries, government organizations, and corporations across the state. The center's location in Phoenix is expected to facilitate strong connections with partners such as Arizona State University, Northern Arizona University, the Mayo Clinic, and the Translational Genomics Research Institute, TGen, while boosting the local economy in the process. An investment in CAMI is an investment in the health of Arizona's residents that comes with a tangible physical benefit to the city of Phoenix, Maricopa County, and the state. Science innovation centers such as CAMI are known to produce significant economic growth for their regions. Economic impact estimates show a return on investment of 2.5 to 1 within 10 years, or $87.5 million on a $35 million investment. CAMI is expected to attract more than 150 companies and at least 7,500 new high-wage science-related jobs and 13,000 supporting jobs. 75% will be in the Phoenix area. And finally, economic activity in Arizona would increase by at least $3.9 billion,
Dr.
with an
Dake.
increase in wages of more than $1.8 billion and at least $430 million in new tax revenue for
Dr.
the
Dake.
state and $140 million in local tax revenue for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dake.
Our next speaker is David Higginson, followed by Kathleen Lee.
Thank you.
David, are you available? David, are you on the line? We cannot hear you at this moment. Please unmute or adjust your speaker.
Madam Chair. David.
You hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Thank
Please
you.
proceed.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. My name is David Higginson. I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Innovation Officer at Phoenix Children's. I'm here to support the ASU Health Technology Center request and tell you a little bit about the strategic partnership that we've had with ASU for over 5 years. The first area of emphasis we've worked with ASU is around nursing. And you can imagine that a children's hospital like ours and the growing Phoenix, that the need for nurses is constant, and that pipeline is really important to keep going. And a really important part of that is new graduates coming out of nursing school. What we did was work with ASU about 5 years ago when we recognized that nurses being trained were not coming out of the system with any pediatric experience whatsoever. That's challenging because it means we have to spend another 12 to 14 weeks re-educating nurses before they can become effective. But just as importantly, nurses come out of that program not knowing whether pediatrics is for them. And so what we did is work with ASU to develop really innovative programs where nurses got the chance to come to the hospital long before they graduated, experience what it's like to become a pediatric nurse, and get lots of skills so they could hit the ground running. And within 4 weeks, they're effectively taking care of the children of Arizona. The other area we really work with them is around innovation. What you may not know is that children's hospitals don't treat little adults. We actually treat children with very complicated diseases, and many manufacturers don't make products that are really suited for children's hospitals. And so what greater way to solve those problems, but with young students from ASU who have a passion and new ideas around ways to bring new products to help the children in Arizona. And one of the things I've noticed with working with those kids is that before we start working with them, they all want to go work for a big 6 consulting firm somewhere on the East or the West Coast. By the time we finish working with them, they're excited and can't believe what an amazing place we have in Phoenix Children's. And I will tell you that ASU follows through and is engaged. This is not just a strategic partnership that's on paper. It's something that works every single day. We work with them all the time. And so we strongly encourage the committee to fully fund the Health Technology Center so we can stay at the forefront of bioscience, innovation, and economic development for the upcoming bond election. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Our next speaker is Kathleen Lee, followed by Kyle Hardeen. Kathleen, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Okay, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairwoman Carter and subcommittee members for the opportunity to provide brief comments in support of ASU Health Technology Center today. My name is Kathleen Lee. I'm Senior Vice President of Regional Initiative at the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. I also serve as the Director of Applied Research Centers at the Partnership for Economic Innovation. As economic development professional with almost 15 years of experience, I have seen public investments in centers like ASU Health Technology Center generate multiple economic returns and benefits to the community. The proposed investments in ASU Health Technology Center is a smart, place-based economic development strategy for Phoenix and our greater metro region. The healthcare sector is projected to grow over the next decade, adding 90,000 new jobs. Technological innovations in remote monitoring, wearable sensors, devices, as well as AI and machine learning technologies are the future of personalized healthcare. These technologies will help reduce cost of healthcare by allowing doctors and patients to better manage chronic conditions, mitigate risk, and shorten hospital stays. We need these vital research and education capabilities like what is being proposed through the ASU Health Technology Center to become a world-class leader in digital health. The center will educate generation of innovative workforce, researchers, and entrepreneurs who will build new products and new businesses in Phoenix. GPEC is currently leading a $160 million grant proposal from the NSF to build a digital healthcare innovation engine. The city's commitment will help us become more competitive with this opportunity to bring significant federal resources. We request the subcommittee to recommend inclusion of $15 million ASU Health Technology Center in this bond election. And I would like to thank the subcommittee members for their consideration and the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you. Next.
Our next speaker is Kyle Hardeen, followed by Rick Hall. Kyle, are you on the line?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Hi, my name is Kyle Jardine. I am with Wexford Science and Technology. We are grateful for the partnership with City of Phoenix and ASU on the Phoenix Bioscience Core. Today, I just wanted to voice my support and the recommendation for the ASU Health Technology Center funding in the general obligation bond. ASU has been a great partner of ours and of the city, and we've seen the impact that endeavors like this can have in the growth and economic development of cities. Wexford is a national developer across the country in 17 different markets, and similar initiatives to this have fueled great economic development and led by strong institutions like ASU. So just like to voice my support for that, and that is it. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Next.
Our next speaker is Rick Hall. Rick, are you on the line?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Rick Hall. I'm a clinical professor at Arizona State University and an assistant dean in the Edson College of Nursing and Health Innovation. In a time of significant disruptions, we are training future leaders to ideate and create solutions to solve real healthcare problems. This is not an easy task. We are literally training students for jobs that don't yet exist. Yet, despite these disruptions in policy, communication, and technology, we have created an environment that leads to an international recognition as the most innovative university. We do this in a number of ways, which includes entrepreneurial and innovation training for all students at every level. And this is only possible through partnerships and support of many people and organizations who have been testifying before you. I have enjoyed a partnership with the City of Phoenix for many years. Through the support of your city, we have built the Health Entrepreneur Accelerator Lab, which has trained over 3,000 students in 4 years on health innovation in downtown Phoenix campus. We help students, faculty, staff, and community members identify health-related problems, ideate innovative solutions, create sustainable business models, gain funding, and launch. Through our partnership with the Mayo Clinic and my role as a managing partner for the Mayo Clinic and ASU MedTech Accelerator, we have hosted over 22 health technology companies from all over the world to come to Phoenix for go-to-market strategies. In those few short years, those companies have raised over $150 million, signed 75 commercial deals, and received 20 grants, and also employ over 420 people. Our state, centered by the City of Phoenix, needs continued support to build on and sustain the work we are doing. I ask for your support and investment for students, researchers, innovators, entrepreneurs who are building tomorrow's solutions for today's healthcare problems. I ask that you support the $15 million GEO bond proposal toward ASU Health Technology Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further people waiting to provide public comment?
Madam Chair, that was our last virtual speaker.
Perfect. So, committee members, without any further ado, we will return back to the agenda discussing the items for consideration today.
And Madam Chair, just to clarify, those were our virtual speakers. My understanding is we do have 4 individuals in person, but we can come to them after the end of the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'll continue on. So as we talked about with the RIO, that is a staff recommended prioritized request as we look at future capital needs. Our first is the ASU Health Technology Center. So as a summary, the city investment for infrastructure that is before you today, infrastructure and public building improvements, would be tied to the $75 to $130 million health technology center that ASU is proposing to build. It would advance a new set of programs in public health, including training and degree programs for advanced nursing and retraining of an existing workforce. It would help our recommended for the bond proposal would be help to leverage other federal, state, local, and university and philanthropic funding opportunities that could move this project forward in a more a quick manner. It would also assist in the development of a future workforce. I don't know about you all, but finding a workforce for every business we work with these days it becomes more and more challenging. We're hearing from our healthcare institutions how challenging that workforce is for them today, and let alone from our research institutions and our private sector research companies. As was recommended by the committee at your last meeting, staff has moved this into a combined request for $15 million in future capital needs. You'll remember it was 2 separate items. It is now a single item at $15 million. As we look at the project, that it is partially covered under the scope of an existing project or program, but it would replace the advanced nursing facility and the microelectronics facility that were 2 separate items. They were each in at just over $5 million. They've been combined now for a total of $15 million. The partial funding would be beneficial to the project, as ASU is seeking other funding sources to get to the $75 to $130 million. The project cost estimates did come from Arizona State University, and they are confident that the project could be completed in the 5-year time frame. This project would require minimal work from city staff, as this would be something that would be handled by Arizona State University. And I'll pause there for any questions you might have.
Thank you. Members, any questions for staff related to the ASU request? Hearing none, please continue.
Madam Chair, thank you. As we look at other future capital needs, public infrastructure is one we've reviewed in the past. In summary, as we look at public infrastructure, when anybody asks me what keeps me awake at night in economic development, it's infrastructure and workforce. Those are the two things that are probably our greatest challenge in Arizona in leveraging what we have here, this kind of tale of two cities, a completely built out city and a city that's never seen a shovel. The program as it's proposed would provide funding for the city to look at strategic locations to bring public infrastructure. Staff would propose funding at $1 million a year plus the 1% for the arts for a total of $5,050,000. And I thought it might be helpful for you as you consider these items to understand what's it going to get you in public infrastructure. So I think it's important to note this would not most likely cover anything on a large project scale. This wouldn't be for a large industrial park or a large retail center or a large office development, but often we have small developers and small businesses that have a there but for is what we call it. And a there but for is I'd love to redevelopment and refresh my center, my small center, and bring in new tenants, but because of fire sprinkler requirements, I got to run a $180,000 water line that makes this cost prohibitive for me to do this redevelopment. As we look at adaptive reuse, where we're taking old houses and turning them into great bars and restaurants and public benefit spaces, the same thing. They might not be near a fire hydrant. They might need to run a water line. They might need another point of egress from their particular site. And our small businesses. Our small businesses, I think in the first meeting I shared with you a challenge that a restaurateur had recently that we were able to solve through a creative mechanism. So when we look at the costs and examples of what the $5 million could cover, I thought it would be helpful for you to see what the city's cost is to complete some of these things. If it's a full traffic signal, it can be around $400,000. If it's a quarter of a traffic signal, half a traffic signal, you can do the math. Fire hydrants are approximately $20,000. Water lines, as we run them short distances, are about $130 a linear foot, so you see them at $100,000 to $250,000. Sidewalk and landscaping to make beautify an area and make it beneficial for the entire community, $50,000 to $100,000. And each of our street lights, depending what's on them, can be as much as $40,000 a street light. Just thought it would be helpful to get it in your mind to get an idea of what that $5 million could cover. As we look at a wrap-up of the infrastructure project, it is not covered under any other existing project or program. The economic development request for public infrastructure assistance would be on a case-by-case basis, and each item would go to City Council for their authorization. So it wouldn't be in staff's purview to pick. We would take them each to City Council. Partial funding would reduce the number of projects that we could assist, but it would still be beneficial. The project cost estimates came from our streets and public works departments. The projects would be completed over the 5-year period of time of the bond, and this project would require city staff time to be able to manage the installation and construction and long-term maintenance of any additional infrastructure, public infrastructure that was installed. I think it is important to note that none of this infrastructure would be on private property. This is only for true right-of-way public infrastructure. And Madam Chair, with that, I'd be happy to take any questions the committee might have.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions related to that discussion item?
Just clarification,
Please.
Madam Chair. Chris, thank you. In terms of these dollars, at the beginning, I think you mentioned structures that would need, for instance, sprinkler systems, but that would conceivably be private property, wouldn't it?
Madam Chair, Committee Member Sanders, you provide a great clarifying point. You're correct. Inside, which we cannot cover, is the sprinklers themselves. But most of these older homes had a half-inch water line that fed to them through the public right-of-way. So the larger water line needs to be placed in the right-of-way to be able to support the pressures required by our fire department to support the privately funded sprinklers.
Thank you.
Great clarification. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the committee, our last item is the Spark area land acquisition, and it is under future capital needs. As a reminder, the Spark area is the Aviation land reuse program that is west of 16th Street, east of 7th Street, from the railroad tracks to just south of I-17. This is an area that our aviation department, in partnership with the Federal Aviation Administration, acquired land over a nearly 50-year period of time for noise mitigation at the approach of Sky Harbor. There was at that time also some ideas to lengthen runways in that particular area. That's no longer a need, but the noise mitigation was of real concern at that time. So through voluntary programs in that area, city did acquire about 743 properties in that particular area. It created a disparate set of property owners in properties that we own. In other words, they're kind of sporadic. You might have 3 small 7,000 square foot residential lots in a row. Then you've got 5 lots we don't own and a house right in the middle of it. And you've got all of this mishmash of things, making it very, very challenging to execute the 2017 community derived plan that the City Council did adopt in the aviation land reuse study. Staff is proposing $500,000 per year to allow the acquisition of properties when they become available, or in making proactive offers to landowners to be able to assemble sites large enough to execute the community's vision that they worked for more than 2 years to create. Over a 5-year time frame, that would be $2.5 million in funding that staff would have to be able to acquire some of these properties. As we look at examples of land acquisition, they are small vacant land sites. Most of them, I think the largest one I've seen when I go into the county assessor and look at them is a 10,000 square foot lot. Some of them go down to as small as 1,500 square feet. Not quite sure what was on them in the day, but very small. The average is right around 7,000 square feet, which was a standard residential lot back in the day. Staff would prioritize those land acquisitions based on where we already have a more significant amount of assemblable land to be able to then take the aviation land reuse strategy and go out for a request for proposal to bring in private sector funding to leverage against the city-owned land. Based on the current comparables of real estate in this particular area, the $2.5 million would allow us to acquire anywhere from 3 to 10 additional sites annually, depending on their size and location. So if we take the 5 years, it would be 15 to 50 sites that we could acquire based on the current comparables in the area. As you can imagine, this land is far less valuable, far less expensive in its comparables than the more large assembled land sites that are along the river. This would provide for the creation of things that the community has long visioned for, which are some just basic services in medical services, in food markets, cultural centers, creating cultural corridors. This was a very strong Latino community. Santa Rita Hall sits in the middle of it, where Cesar Chavez did conduct his fast. It is a very sacred location for all of us. Sports and entertainment centers that the community looks for, whether it's in soccer or baseball or basketball, and then markets and place for mercado and food options, more restaurants. We have some, if you've not been along Buckeye, we have some incredible restaurants that are along there, and we'd be looking to add to those. But also in hotel and hospitality, in job creation and creating workforce training skills center. There already is a Maricopa Skills Training Center in partnership with our community colleges there and our wonderful elementary schools through Phoenix.gov. But also creating a business entrepreneurship and incubators where our small businesses can continue training. So as we wrap up, this project is not covered under any other existing scope or program. Partial funding would be beneficial to the project, but would reduce the number of properties that we could acquire. The project estimates did come from city staff, but they were from real comparables of recent land transactions in the last 120 days. The project would be active over a 5-year period of time, and the project would require city staff in property management, in RFPs, and in getting the land into production. Madam Chair, with your direction, I'd be happy to take any questions the committee might have.
Thank you. Members, let's start with any additional questions on the last project as described, the Spark project. I just had a quick question regarding that. Could you just restate, this is part of a prior city committee that came together and prioritized that. Could you just highlight that one more time?
Yes, Madam Chair. There was a committee that was formed by the City Council through our Aviation Department, and it is a community group called the Aviation Land Reuse Committee, and that was made up of community organizations throughout the area, private property owners, businesses that were in the area that got together over a 2-year period of time and really tabletopped and heard from professionals about what could be developed in the area. And you know them as event programs where everybody's got their red sticky and you put on it what's important to you. And they worked through a 2-year process to create that aviation land reuse strategy. We had a consultant that led us through that entire effort with the community. It was brought back to City Council and brought back to City Council for their formal adoption, which was adopted, and then it was sent to the Federal Aviation Administration for their concurrence. Since FAA has dollars in that land, anything that we do in that area has to be acknowledged by the FAA that they don't see a risk with what we're proposing in that area. The study is still with the FAA. The overall scope of work is still with the FAA. The aviation director does expect that to be back to the city with any comments from the FAA before the end of this year.
Thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none, let's move to our in-person public comment, and then once we finish with that, we'll move into general discussion of the committee members in terms of how we want to move forward. So I will allow staff to call those in person up to the podium for testimony.
Our next speaker in upper council chambers is Rafael Fonseca, followed by Chris Yu.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Rafael Fonseca. I'm an oncologist at the Mayo Clinic, where I serve as a Chief Innovation Officer, but I'm also the physician lead for the relationship between Mayo Clinic and ASU. And we have partnered with ASU for over 20 years under what we call the Mayo Clinic ASU Alliance for Healthcare, where we really focus on research, education, and innovation. And it goes without saying that ASU has been a tremendous partner in spurring innovation and economic development for our region. And time and again, they have propelled this region as a national leader in innovation. And we don't need to be reminded that for 8th year in a row now, they have been identified as the most innovative university in the United States. Now, our partnership is illustrated also by the recent construction of the Health Future Center building. It's a 150,000 square feet building just adjacent to our hospital that houses joint activities between Mayo Clinic and ASU, including my own laboratory. Now, Mayo Clinic is making historic investments in the city of Phoenix, shy of $1 billion recently. And with these investments, we will, by 2024, double the size of our campus here in Phoenix. And we have recently acquired an additional 228 acres for a project we call Discover Oasis, where we want to bring together the best out there in biotech and health innovation. So it is with that we think that the addition of the ASU Health Technology Center downtown will make us be ready for the infrastructure that we need to continue with this path for innovation. And we ask that you support and prioritize the request being brought forward by ASU. And we cannot wait until the next bond election so we can capitalize on the forward movement. So with that, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Next.
Our next speaker is Chris Yu, followed by Wes Gullett.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Yu. I'm CEO of Yu & Company Accelerators and a general partner in Accelerant Ventures, a new venture capital fund that is going to invest in new startups here in healthcare and life sciences. Over the past 15 years, I've been a serial entrepreneur. I've operated companies that have grown up here in the greater Phoenix area. And of late, I've turned my attention to helping other founders and entrepreneurs build successful startups in Arizona. ASU's Center for Health Technology will provide one of the key factors that most, if not all, startups face here in Arizona, in my experience, and that is access to talent in the form of healthcare workers, technologists who understand healthcare, and the synergy that you get between a collaboration of technologists and healthcare workers trying to solve the problems that we face, which are accessibility to more affordable and efficient healthcare. By supporting the ASU Center for Health Technology, this City Council will really provide the next stage of growth for these companies, which often does not happen in this region. It's why some of these founders end up going to other places like on the coasts where many of these startups seem to thrive. We want startups to thrive here, and we think that by having a focus on the technologies and the workforce trained on those technologies, that will have a better chance to support entrepreneurs and successful startups. So please do support ASU's Center for Healthcare Technology, and I highly recommend the council vote to approve the bond. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Our next speaker is Wes Gullett, followed by Erica Forzani.
Hello, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Wes Gullett. While I totally support the Rio Reimagined, I am here today to speak on behalf of the WearTech Center, which is a technology center located at Park Central Mall, where we develop wearable technology to improve healthcare and human performance. I am here to support, and WearTech is a function of the Partnership for Economic Innovation. I'm here to support the ASU Health and Science Technology Center because expanding our ecosystem of development will be incredibly important for our community to continue this process. At the WearTech Center, we have 12 projects underway right here in the city of Phoenix, and we have 12 that we're onboarding right now. We do that through a matching grant fund with the state of Arizona. So we're able to leverage about $10 million of investment. And this development with ASU and our partnership with ASU will enhance our ability to grow that program and grow these small businesses and technologies right here in Phoenix. It's an incredible opportunity. It will help us leverage additional resources from both the federal government and the state of Arizona, and we would encourage you to do this today because technology doesn't wait, and we need to advance these healthcare solutions immediately. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
Our next speaker is Erica Forzani.
Hello, my name is Erica Forzani. I am Associate Professor in Chemical Engineering at Arizona State University, and I'm also an entrepreneur. I am supported by the WearTech Center. Currently, we are developing the next generation of this wearable that you can see right here. This wearable allows the professionals to control and understand how metabolic adaptation for obesity problems happen. We are further improving this wearable by creating sensors whose secret sauce are kept right here in our state and produced just a few miles far from here. So we are very passionate about what we do. We produce. We have delivered over 2,500 devices like this one worldwide so far. We are creating new technologies with all the tremendous support in the environment that ASU offers and centers like the tech center, as well as facilities like health future centers by the Mayo Clinic Hospital. We work very close with doctors at the Mayo Clinic. We work with doctors at Barrow Neurological Institute and started collaborations with Phoenix Children's Hospitals. We are permanently looking at the needs in there and trying to bring up new technologies in point of care and wearables. And we are making it happen. We are making it happening by attracting small business innovation awards. Over the last years, we have attracted more than $10 million, myself and colleagues near myself, but you can imagine ASU is currently hiring hundreds of faculties like myself that, we can produce like domino effect and really construct together this empire of healthcare technology. I do believe we can do it, and we have the human resources to do it. We just need additional resources to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, that was our last speaker.
Thank you very much. So that concludes our public comment section of our agenda. So committee members, we are at a critical point in our committee process. So I'd like to open it up for discussion. We have the opportunity to do one of two things. We can prioritize today through a discussion in a public forum what items we would like to move forward. And if we are comfortable with our ranking, we can then consider this the last meeting that we have, because we will have concluded our work. I did speak through staff to the chairman, and Chairman Reed is okay if we do that today. So it will be up to the committee on whether we feel comfortable doing that or not. With that in mind, just to give you an idea of what we're looking at from a process, as it stands right now, as you can see on the slide, we have one prioritized project, which means that would be the only project as it stands now that would go to the executive committee. The other three items would stay in the future capital needs projects. Just as a means of housekeeping, as today you heard, there was one additional project that would like to be included in the future capital needs project. So that would require a motion by a committee member and a second to do that. So let's pause there and see if you are interested in doing that. Would anybody like to make a motion to move the U of A project for CAMI into the future capital needs project? Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Here's the ayes have it, do have it. And so the CAMI project will move into the future capital needs project. Then, as just an order of discussion as well, does the committee want to move any of the bulleted projects in the future capital needs project into the priority projects? It is my understanding, and I'm looking for staff for confirmation, we do not need to prioritize anything that's in the future category, only things that we move up to the priority category. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, that is correct.
Thank you. So right now we have one item. We could stop there, or we can move, there's been a request to move the ASU Health Technology Center project up into the priority project, and then we want to determine whether we would like to include the other two projects as well. So I'm going to open that up for discussion. Well, you wanted, yes, sorry.
Just one point of clarification. If I understand it correctly, we've got a prioritized project. We have three that could move up.
Correct.
But CAMI is saying we're waiting for the next bond election.
Correct.
So it's actually different than the other three. It's not trying to get into the prioritized category.
Thank you for that clarification. Now, with that last vote that we took, they are in the future capital needs project, but they have not requested to move up to the priority project.
Right.
list.
And so if 5 years from now there's another bond election like this one or whenever it is, they'll be considered at that point.
Exactly. Got it. Perfect. Any other questions from mechanics of where we are at in the discussion? Hearing none. Yes, please.
I'd like to make a statement. I'd like to thank everybody who has submitted a proposal. I know it's difficult to do, and we all sit in anticipation of what we possibly might get. I understand ASU's needs. I understand the Spark area request, and definitely understand the priority project of Reimagine. So I want to just thank everybody who submitted a proposal, and now it's our duty to select or prioritize, and I would like to suggest that we consider the prioritized project of Reimagine, being that the staff came to us and said that that was their priority, and they've had a better chance of studying all the projects than we have in this last 3 meetings, and thereafter we can categorize which ones we want to move forward.
Thank you. That is an excellent suggestion. So should we take a formal motion on that to prioritize? Would you like us to make a formal motion for the prioritization process? No?
Madam Chair, we don't need a motion on that right now,
Okay.
but if you are going to move other projects forward, then we would want to rank those projects for prioritized projects and have a motion on that.
Okay, thank you. So with that instruction from staff and legal counsel, what I'm hearing you say is that this is just a discussion. What you're suggesting is no matter what moves up into that top priority project category, you'd like to continue to have the Reimagine project as the top item. Thank you.
That's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Absolutely. So at this point in time, is there a motion to move anything in the future capital needs project up to the priority project list? Well, there is no formal. Thank you. So you into the microphone. Perfect. Thank you. A question from Committee Member Sokoloff.
Yeah. So we're asking staff to basically come back with a prioritization of the 4 entities. No, we're not asking them to come back.
Right now, what we're doing is publicly, we're just discussing it, and staff would take whatever recommendation we made if we are at a position where we feel like we can finalize our work. So at this point, it is just a discussion amongst the members for the prioritization.
Okay. For the projects or for the process?
So we can choose. Thank you for clarifying that, committee members. Would you like to do this via this process, or would you like to use the voting system that they described last week, where we would end the meeting today after we decide if anything moves up, go home, vote, and then come back to another meeting? Or would you rather do it in a public forum like this where we discuss it? So thank you for that clarification. Which way would you like to go? Just feedback and we can make a very casual decision.
Just another point of clarification on this process. If we move any of the future capital needs projects into the prioritized project category, do we then need to rank the prioritized projects? Okay.
Yes, that is correct. And so, to follow up on that,
I think I would recommend. I don't know what my colleagues on the committee would recommend, that we go ahead and move whichever future capital needs projects we feel like we need to move. And then see what we need to do from that point.
So committee, we have a recommendation that we move projects from the future capital needs project into the prioritized project before we make a decision on how we would actually prioritize the projects. Does that work with the committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So at this point in time, yes.
I would like to make, Madam Chair, a clarification. So out of fairness and perception and reality, I am an ASU employee. And I think it would be unfair for me to be advocating on behalf of a project, but my silence about that project shouldn't be interpreted one way or the other. I just think for everybody involved in the bond process, I know that many of these projects very well. I can certainly speak to Reimagine, but I think it would probably not be appropriate for me to be offering an opinion about the movement of the ASU project. You've got qualified bond members, committee members here who could do that. So I just wanted to make it clear that I think that's appropriate for me.
Thank you. And staff, I'm going to ask for clarification. We have, without one vote, we still have quorum with 5 because we have a committee member, Kennedy, on the phone. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, that's correct.
Okay, so would you like to formally abstain from a vote on the ASU project wherever we are in the process?
I think that would be appropriate. I'd like to formally abstain.
Perfect. So now, committee members, we are to the point of where we need to decide, do we want to move any of the projects forward?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion we move the ASU Health Technology Center project into the prioritized project category.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
A discussion for our attorney, if we have family members that work at ASU, are we okay to vote?
Family members.
Madam Chair, Committee Member Dr. Sprout, I guess the question would be if you're assuming that there are employees that have no direct role in this project or don't benefit either way, whether it gets approved or not, then you would be free to vote on it without having a conflict.
Thank you for that clarification. So we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Appears the ayes have it, do have it so ordered. We will move the ASU Health Technology Center into the prioritized project. Members, there are two items remaining in the future capital needs, both the Spark area land acquisition and the economic development public infrastructure. We could move one or both into the prioritized project. So just as a general discussion, does anybody feel strongly either way?
Discussion. Taking into consideration that we can only, the city will come out with a $500 million bond, and we have a number of other committees that are working on other projects. I think we need to realistically think about how we spend our money or going to spend our money. So thinking in that term and in that vein, I would still keep Reimagine as priority project one. ASU has just been, Technology Center has been moved out, so now we have two left. So I would go for the Spark area only because it's the least amount of money that's being requested, so that we can move it up and hopefully that it'll get funded or make it into the process. So that would be my recommendation, and of course the last one would be the public infrastructure.
So just to clarify, are you making a formal motion? We could do it one by one or both?
Either way.
So would you like, committee members, would you like to do them one by one or both? Is there a strong feeling? I'm of the mindset we move both of them up and we prioritize them.
I support the chairman.
Oh,
So would you like to make a formal motion to move both to the prioritized?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So now, where we're at in the process is we have moved both, or all three future capital needs projects into the priority project list. We will retain the CAMI future capital project needs list in that bottom category. And now we are at the process point where we need to decide how we will prioritize. Committee, just my own opinion is I feel like we are in a position where we could prioritize these, but if anybody feel strongly that they would rather do this and have another meeting after we vote using the city suggested system. Discussion?
Did I make a motion?
We can keep, we don't need a motion. We just need to we could keep moving. Are you in the camp of keep moving or pause?
Yeah, keep moving.
Keep moving. Anybody feel strong?
The team, the staff's done a great job, and I think we have a lot of information, Madam Chair.
Perfect. So according to staff, this is a very informal process until we have the final ranking, and then it would require a formal motion.
Madam Chair, Subcommittee Members, that is correct.
Okay, so we'll keep going. We have a discussion point on the table to retain Rio Reimagine in the first position. Is there anybody that holds a differing opinion to that or would like to discuss that? Okay, feels like we are in a unanimous decision to keep the Rio Reimagine land acquisition in the first position. Now we are deciding which project will move into the second position. Does any committee member want to make a recommendation or discuss that item?
I think the ASU
into the microphone.
I'm sorry.
Yep, no
Forgive
worries.
me. I believe the ASU proposal is most comprehensive, has the most impact, and ultimately the greatest ROI for the city as a whole and for the economic development of our region, basically.
Thank you. Addition, comment?
Madam Chair, question. So if all four have been moved into the prioritized category, they'll all be sent up to an executive committee who has the very difficult job of parsing 6, 7, 8 committees' work. Will they know that there was in fact one prioritized project and 3 that we moved up? We're going to provide a ranking, which will, I think, be very important. But as we want to see some of these that will be highly ranked achieve some sort of passage in the executive committee, will that committee know that in fact one was prioritized and the others were not? Would that make a difference in how they approach their work?
Staff, could you please describe the executive committee process once we have these priority projects ranked?
Yes. So Chairwoman Carter, Committee Member Ryder, and subcommittee members. So when we forward this, your recommendation, the committee's recommendation to the full executive committee, they will see the listing of each project in the rank order. Previously, the executive committee was also provided with our list of the one priority project as well as the future capital needs. So in our summary that we provide to the executive committee, we can explain the process that the committee went through and the ranking process as well. But in there, we would explain that there was one original priority project and 3 were brought forward, and now this is the new ranking.
Thank you. Does that answer your
See,
question?
that'd be important.
Thank you.
So, excuse me. So as point of clarification, we'll be ranking when the committee does the review. From my way of thinking, I would say that they would look at the first priority, and then depending on how the funding and money is falling, then they'll decide whether they can move the other one up and forward and move forward. Am I correct?
Yes, Chairwoman Carter, subcommittee members, and committee member Pastor, you are correct. So similar to like we did in this bond subcommittee, Christine Mackey, our CED director, will be making a presentation to the full committee as well, and making the justification for each of the projects that have been, that will move forward. And so they will understand that this was the priority and the reasons why, and why we feel that the committee feels that each of these projects have merit.
And a further, great question, and to further just describe the communication back to the executive committee, you will also give some sort of a summary statement of our conversation here. So things that we say in deliberation here on the ranking will also be entered into the public record for the public and summarized for the executive committee. Is that correct?
Chairwoman Carter and subcommittee members, that is correct. And so one of the things that our budget and research department will be doing is providing a summary of the work of the committee's work, and that will be provided to the full executive committee. We can also provide that draft to the subcommittee so that you can review it prior to submittal.
Thank you.
And our committee chair is on the executive committee as well, correct?
Chairwoman Carter and committee member Sprout, that is a great point. Yes, our chairman, Robin Reed, does serve on the executive committee, and he will be a part of that presentation with Director Mackey.
Great clarification. So members, we have identified our top priority, RIO Reimagined. We have a discussion item that the ASU Health Technology Center move into the second position. We have 2 additional items, the Economic Development, Public Infrastructure, and Spark Area Land Acquisition. Just as a general conversation, not making any formal motions, let's take them one by one. ASU Health Technology Center in the second position. Where does the committee feel in terms of that as a priority, as a ranking in the priority list? People agree with that? Do they not agree with that? Do we like it in the second position? Do we want to consider one of the other items to move ahead of it, minus the one individual who has recused himself?
I think that makes sense, Madam Chair, number 2.
Thank you. I have looks like I'm getting a casual nodding of head. We have a second item, ASU Health Technology Center. Then we'll move into the second position of our ranked priority projects. We have 2 projects remaining, the Economic Development, Public Infrastructure, and Spark Area Land Acquisition. I'm going to make a recommendation that the Spark Area Land Acquisition goes into third position because it is following along another citizen committee that worked long and hard for 2 years, and they've been waiting for this additional funding to finish out their project. Does anybody feel strongly in that same direction or a different direction? I'm seeing a lot of nodding of heads. We have a third project, which then puts the Economic Development, Public Infrastructure in the fourth position. So therefore, we now have 4 ranked projects in the priority project category. Would somebody please make a formal motion to move that ranked priority
Madam
project
Chair,
list?
just for clarification, since you do have one member who's declared abstained from one vote, I'd recommend doing a motion for RIO Reimagined first, voting on that, then doing a separate motion for each individual project. That way the committee member who had a conflict can vote on the three that they don't have a conflict on, and then just abstain from the one vote.
Thank you for that instruction. So we will do this one by one. So who would like to make the first motion?
I move that Rio Reimagine be the number one priority in the prioritized projects.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All any opposed? Appears the ayes have it, do have it so ordered. Who would like to make the second motion,
Madam
please?
Chair.
Please.
I move the ASU Health Technology Center be slotted into number 2 slot, probably in the priority project list.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion on the table for the ASU Health Technology Center to be in the second position. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Chair Committee Member Kennedy. Great to hear you on the phone there. So that motion passes as well. Can I have a motion for the third project?
Madam Chair, I move that the Spark area land acquisition project be moved into slot number 3.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you. Committee members, we have a motion to move the Spark area land acquisition into the third position of the prioritized project. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Here's the ayes have it, do have it so ordered. And final motion for the economic development public infrastructure.
Madam Chair, I move, sorry, I move that we put these economic development public infrastructure in the 4th slot.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of moving the Spark area land acquisition into the 4th prioritized project position, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Hearing none, that moves as well. So now we have, I believe, completed our work for this subcommittee. Staff, is there any other housekeeping things that we need to do before we close the committee?
Chairwoman Carter, before we adjourn, I'd just like to thank you and each of our subcommittee members for your service and for your leadership on this committee. Thank you for hearing staff's presentation. I also want to acknowledge staff and all the work that has been put into the committee as well. And we just, again, want to thank you for your efforts, and we will forward this recommendation to the full executive committee. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Committee members, any closing comments?
We thank the staff equally. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
We appreciate your service to the city and look forward to some progress on these projects. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.